As Halloween approaches, the veil between this world and beyond gets lifted a little more each day, and most people seek out stories of the strange and unexplained, and I am here to deliver. Enjoy. When I was a teenager, there was an abandoned mental hospital a few towns over. We used to urban explore it. One evening, we're walking around. It's pretty dark. We hear something, shine our flashlights to the left, and dude is just walking down the hall, in the dark, no flashlight, in full scrubs. He doesn't say anything, doesn't make eye contact, nothing. Just keeps walking straight ahead. We keep our flashlights on him until he turns the corner. We don't say anything to each other, and don't stop running until we get back outside. Once we're outside, we stop to catch our breath and discuss. All three of us saw it. It wasn't my imagination, but no one ever believes us. I haven't told anyone this story since I was a child, because when I told my cousins what was happening, it scared them really bad, and I got my second only whooping with a belt by my dad. As an adult, I don't mention it because I just don't know what it was, and I don't want other adults to think I'm insane. When I was in second grade, I woke up one summer night, dead of night, to a woman floating through my window into my bedroom. Oddly, I wasn't scared. I just sat up and asked, "What are you doing here?" I remember she answered me, but oddly enough the next morning, I couldn't remember what she said or even what her voice sounded like. I couldn't even remember what she looked like. So next I said to her, in true 8-year-old fashion, "Well, you better get going because my dad might wake up and then he'll be mad." She slipped out of my already cracked open bedroom window, and I went back to sleep. Sounds like sleep paralysis, right? Wrong. The next day, I was really excited that I had my own fairy godmother, and I named her Crystal. I thought in my head, please come back. Come back and wake me up at dawn so we can talk. No lie, the next morning, just as it was getting light outside, I hear someone whispering my name. I realized that this was real. She was a ghost, and I froze. I stayed as still as I could, not even able to breathe, and just prayed as hard as I could. Go away, go away, go away. I could feel her right by my head. As I'm typing this, tears are coming to my eyes. Okay, it happened once. Coincidence, right? No. Every time I would get brave and say out loud to her, before going to my bedroom, "Okay, come this time, I swear I won't get scared," she would come, whisper my name. I would almost crap myself in fear and never open my eyes. At this point, I'm thinking it could still be night terrors, right? I mean, our eyes have receptors sensitive to light that wake us up, thus causing me to wake up at dawn and hallucinate this stuff. But here's where it gets real. The next summer, I'm telling a friend that this is going on while we're camping together. She doesn't believe me, so I ask her to come tonight. We're sleeping in the same tent, and my friend wants to see for herself. At dawn, I hear her calling my name, and my friend's name too. We don't move. She leaves. We both sit up, and my friend heard her too. She freaks out, tells her parents later that day sobbing, and I get in trouble for scaring the crap out of kids with ghost stories. Later that summer, I told my cousin the story, and before that night she freaks out, tells her mom, and I get my butt beat again for telling ghost stories. Now, I just don't think about it anymore, and never when I'm alone at night. So to preface this, my friend is a completely normal guy. I've worked with him in the engineering realm for a bit. He's definitely a smart guy, doesn't have a screw loose. So to hear this story was crazy. It still left me thinking about things like the supernatural until today. He moved into this house in Portland, Oregon, and it was always a little off. When he first moved in, he heard some creaks and stuff, but mostly just old house noises. Then, sometimes he could swear he heard footsteps or doors creaking open or closed. The most peculiar thing about the house was that even with all the shades drawn up and letting the sun in, the house always seemed dark. As some of the noises increased in frequency, so did strange things happening. He asked his roommates about the noises, and they had all agreed that they heard peculiar things around the house, and particularly the basement. The basement had some stairs leading down. From what he described, there were 2 rooms, the main room with the stairs in it, and another room attached that had an extra door in it on the opposite corner of the first door. He was a drummer and had his drums set up in the main basement room to practice his drums. The first of the strange things to happen would be in his bedroom. He saw smoke-like stuff coming from under the door, and it started moving up toward the upper corner of his door. He thought the house was on fire as the smoke-like stuff began to cluster in the corner. So he opened the door and was going to bail. But when he opened it and looked into the hallway was completely fine. No smoke, no fire. Then he looked into the back corner, and all the clustered smoke had vanished. After that, sometime later, he was using the bathroom. Heard the door open. Without looking behind him, he says, "Hey, hang on a minute, I'm almost done." But the door didn't shut. So he finished up and turned around to one of the most frightening things he'd ever seen. Clear as day in front of him was an apparition of a young girl in a plaid dress. And he looked up, and when he got to her face, starting from her feet, there was nothing there. He could clearly see right through her. Just a blank face. He was so scared, he said he didn't even remember putting his pants back on. He just shut his eyes and ran to the door that he thought was open, through the ghost. But then he ran straight into it because apparently it was closed. Frantically, he opened the door without really opening his eyes and scrambled to his bed. He said he dove in it like a child and held the sheets over his head until he went to sleep, terrified. Finishing this story, I have crazy goosebumps. I promise you it's true, but nobody else believes him. I'm walking home from a friend's house who lives on a country road, a few kilometers out of my hometown. This was in March of 2001. Another friend was with me. As we're walking, we both notice an orange light in a field, a few hundred meters to our left. We both glanced at it, but both ignored it, putting it off as a tractor or farm vehicle of some sort. We keep walking, when we both get a strong whiff of ozone. Both of us turn and look at the field, just in time to see an orange ball of light a few meters rise and then rocket into the air, soundlessly. We both stood still for a few seconds, then bolted like hell down the road, sprinting until we both nearly collapsed. We ran all the way back to his place and told his parents what we had seen. They, of course, laughed at us. His dad suggested if we had seen anything at all, which he doubted, then it was probably just ball lightning. No one else really ever believed us either. And there weren't any sightings reported in our local paper. I was walking to the local skate park when I turned a corner, just in time to watch a seemingly homeless man against a building wall unalive himself with a gun from under his chin. I ran like hell, screaming. It was a 10-minute walk run back to my house, at which point I told my dad everything. He calls the police and drives to where I said it happened. 30 minutes or so later, he comes back and says there was nobody there. No blood, no gun, nothing. 3 cops questioned me, and I got accused of lying at first, but the sincerity of my horror and detail led them to believe that I was developing schizophrenia and hallucinated it. I have never hallucinated a day in my life. This one is from a teacher of mine. He's a great guy, but he swears on his pride that this one is true. It was during his college days. He was living in an apartment with 3 other guys. They had been living there for a couple of weeks when weird stuff started happening. One night they had some friends over, so one of them had to sleep on the futon in the living room. The friend was woken up in the middle of the night for no reason. But when he opened his eyes, there was a thin, blonde girl hunched on the ground next to him. Now, not much can make a 6'4", 250-pound tough guy panic, but this did. He just started hollering and yelling for his friends to come out as he grabbed every square inch of the sheets. His friends thought he was just messing with them, but his face said otherwise. They just hung out for the rest of the night until he calmed down. They eventually ordered pizza just because they were no longer tired. When the delivery guy got there, he was surprised. "Hey, this was my old place when I was in school." The teacher chuckled. "Hey, did weird stuff happen when you lived here?" The pizza guy went blank. "Oh crap, you've seen her too?" They moved out the next day. I have a little brother. He is 3 years younger than me. When I was in 6th grade, we were home alone during the summertime and playing around as brothers do. Wrestling, chasing each other around the house, etc. Nothing out of the ordinary. I ended up chasing him into our parents' room, and we were throwing stuff back and forth at each other, having a little fake war across the bed at each other. Kid stuff. It popped into my head that it'd be funny to scare him by shutting off the lights. There were no windows in our parents' room, so with the lights off, it's pitch black, except for whatever light creeps in from under the door. I retreat to the door and decide at the last second that it'd be funnier to leave the room, turning the light out as I passed, and close the door behind me, leaving him in the darkness alone. Maybe scare him a bit. So I did. I shut the door behind me. As I turned the light off and left the room, turning around to listen to him as he panicked and wanted me to come back in. But he didn't. "What are you doing?" I heard him say. Yes, he thinks I'm still in there, I guess. Haha. He didn't see me leave the room, so I keep listening. "Jacob, what are you doing? You're freaking me out. Please stop." That's odd. I wonder what he's talking about. So I keep listening. "Jacob, I'm not joking. Get away from me and turn the light back on now, or I'm telling Mom that you scared me." Get away from me? Did he just say get away from me? Laughing, I yell through the door to him, "Haha, dude, I'm not even in there." He screams loudly, like he's being stabbed or something. I mean a blood-curdling scream. I freak out and try to open the door, but now it's locked, and I didn't lock the door. Why is it locked? My little brother is still screaming, begging me to come help him. "Hurry, please." I'm panicking, and I have no idea what to do. I'm 13 years old and I weigh 90 pounds. I can't bust this door down. My little brother is in trouble. I have to get to him. He stops screaming. I try the door handle again, and to my surprise, it opens effortlessly. It's now unlocked. I open the door and turn on the light, and I see my little brother in the corner crying. After some consoling and apologizing, I finally get him to explain what had happened. And he tells me that when I turned out the light, his eyes hadn't adjusted to the light yet, and it was just dark. After about 20 or 30 seconds, his eyes started to adjust from the light that was peeking under the door, and he saw me standing in the corner with my back to him. When he asked what I was doing, the other me turned to him and started walking slowly across the room toward him. This other me kept coming until it was standing over him, looking down at him. He said he couldn't make out any features, just a dark figure with a shadowy face. He saw a hand extend out toward him and grab his shoulder. It was cold and strong, and it hurt him. When I opened the door and turned on the light, the figure was gone. It just wasn't there. I never saw anything myself. My brother is now 23 and I'm 26, and to this day, he will not talk about this event. We have friends who've heard the story through me and will tease him about it. He simply just leaves the room, refusing to acknowledge it. He's admitted to me that even almost 15 years later, he is bothered by what happened that day. That he still has nightmares from time to time. We both don't have any explanation for what happened. I grew up on the west coast of Ireland in County Galway. One night when I was around 16, I woke up in the middle of a gale with rain pelting the windows and wind whistling through the cracks. Now on this night, there was only me, my mother, and my sisters inside the house, as my father was away minding the castle due to it being calving season. Normally, I'd be helping him out, but not so on this night. We'd had these spotlights to illuminate the outside of the house, and one of these spotlights shone directly up into my window, and even with the curtains closed, it would light up my room. The shadows of branches and long blades of grass would project onto the ceiling, and the gale being what it was caused a frantic wildness to characterize this night's shadow play. I watched the shadows on the ceiling and listened to the wind roar outside for a short while. In fairness, though, it was busting for a while, so I sat up to take off my blanket and look over at the door. My view of the door was such that I couldn't see from my bed into the hallway unless the door was wholly ajar. The door was only slightly cracked, but it was open enough to allow the width of a human arm, and there, extending into the room, was just that. The arm was pale, white, and judging by the shape of the hand on the end, it appeared to be female. It had a classic shroud-like sleeve extending a few inches before the wrist. It waved palm side down for about 5 seconds and then retracted. Now the gale and the lights and the shadows and all that was bearable. Even the arm and hand would have been grand enough. I could have pegged it down to sleep paralysis. But my God, the way that arm retracted back into the hallway, and the way the door handle moved downward as the arm retracted, and the way the door slammed after it. I couldn't breathe. I began to scream and shout. I managed to get my bedside lamp on and covers off, and I began running around the room, opening the door of the hallway into nothingness. Not a soul awake in the freaking house beside me and the ghost. I ran at 16 years of age into my mother's room, screaming about ghosts. She woke up and blearily told me to shut up. You're going to wake up your sisters. So I calmed down, slept on the floor of my mother's room that night. That house had been built by my parents, so no one had died in it. Nothing else even slightly paranormal happened in that house before or since. When I was 4 or 5, I saw a rubber Scrooge McDuck toy rotate by itself. There was this Explorer Scrooge McDuck toy I got from a Happy Meal that I really liked playing with as a kid. It was maybe the length of a cigarette. It had some stereotypical Explorer outfit and a mining pick that I chewed the crap out of until it looked like a mushy stick. Anyway, that unholy little thing rotated and made a full 360 turn right in front of my eyes, while I was alone in the room and standing 5 feet away from it. Naturally, I lose it. I carefully turned it so it faced the wall and ran out of the room. Told my mom, but she didn't believe me. I was persistent, so eventually she got mad and decided to throw out the toy. When we entered my room, Scrooge wasn't facing the wall anymore. Scrooge ended up in the garbage. I have no idea what that was all about. Never experienced anything remotely weird in my entire life after that. I don't really believe in paranormal stuff, and even if I did, I have no idea what kind of entity would choose a Happy Meal DuckTales toy to manifest through. But screw me, for the rest of my life I can't explain this. A few years ago, I was in the kitchen with my sister and my mom, and I saw this enormous spider. This thing was at least 8 inches in diameter, just sitting on the back of one of the dining room chairs. I freaked out and pointed it out to my mom and sister. Neither of them saw the spider. I turned my back to the spider, and it's right in front of me. "You can't see this?" I say, as I'm looking at the spider. They both tell me there's no spider there, and that my joke isn't funny. This entire incident bothers me to this day. I was 11 years old playing RuneScape on my dining room desktop. Everyone else was in the living room. No cars driving by, nothing out of the ordinary. Just a quiet night in the neighborhood, getting them massive XP gains. Keep in mind, I'm not delusional. I have no reason to lie. Everything in the room was still as can be. Everything was fine. All of a sudden, I froze in fear. I was just fighting some moss giants when I froze up in fear for no reason. Then, all of a sudden, the little tablet that I was playing on started to violently shake. I was frozen. Nothing else in the room was moving, but this table. It was shaking so quickly and violently that my mom ran into the room just after it stopped. She asked what was going on. She didn't believe me. Nobody did. That's always freaked me out, and I still have no idea what happened. 10 minutes later, I went back to get more XP gains. Nothing has happened like that since. When I was a little girl, I had anxiety-induced anorexia. After a year or two of starving myself because of an irrational fear of choking on food, I finally beat it. Only then, my fear shifted to night terrors, and it turns out they weren't night terrors. I had this little black sheep thing that always manifested whenever I became stressed or terrified. Sometimes it appeared without rhyme or reason. From time to time, it would appear out of the blue, all casually, as though it wanted to play like a dog or cat. My mother used to think it was just a figment of my imagination, until one day, she saw it for herself, as did my brother. We get very uncomfortable talking about it. Sometimes when I'm alone in my house, I hear scratches on carpet, as though a dog were scampering along. Quite loudly, too. Sometimes there would be knocks on the walls and doors, the usual haunting stuff. My most memorable memory of it was when I was coming home alone, and I saw it scuttle into my mom and dad's bedroom. So naturally, as a curious child would, I followed it. It jumped onto their bed, onto the windowsill, and jumped out the window, 3 stories high. What caught my attention was that the screen hadn't been ripped out or taken out of the window. My dog would bark at it occasionally. I was quite scared of it, even though I'm sure it means me no harm. I can't explain it, but I believe things like that don't happen often enough to be believable. When people would call me crazy or tell me I was seeing things, it was just so hard to convince them that my mom, brother, and dog couldn't all be crazy too. I have one. It's crazy but funny enough that people always think that I'm making it up, despite being able to cross-reference with 2 other people the same exact story. When I was a kid, my brother and I used to visit our cousins 3 hours away. One time, our parents went out and left my brother and me with my 2 cousins. The older cousin had something else to do, so the 3 of us, probably 10 to 13, were on our own. For one reason or another, we were in my aunt and uncle's bedroom when I looked into the living room and saw, clear as day, a pair of my uncle's disembodied dress slacks dancing away in the living room. Obviously freaked out, called my cousin and brother over, and all 3 of us saw it. There's no way it could have been a prank because the legs were moving, dancing, and everything. There was just too much dexterity for them to be controlled by a prankster. And to this day, all 3 of us can collaborate the story. My cousin, who is now a missionary, even swears it happened, despite the fact that it's far outside the realm of her beliefs. When we talk about it, she just takes a breath and says, "Yeah, I remember those dancing pants." I had just pulled into a truck stop inside Billings, Montana. I was playing slots and a beautiful American Indian girl was serving drinks. After quite a few drinks, I started chatting with her on a more personal level. She told me that after her shift ended in a few hours, that she would be behind the truck stop with a case of beer if I felt like partying. I did. I hung around the front of the building when everyone else started filing out of the doors. I went around back to meet her. I couldn't find her, but I found an older Mexican woman who seemed to know my name and acted as if I had just been talking to her inside. I was buzzed, not drunk or stupid. I knew this wasn't the same person. What also struck me as odd was that she had no personal belongings besides the clothes on her back. No purse, no keyring, nothing. I started to feel a little tripped out because of this. Began to act like I didn't know her and didn't want anything to do with her. So she became cold and stopped trying to talk to me. Okay, that was weird. I walk all the way back out to my truck, climb in the back, changed into my sleepwear, and laid on the bunk to reread a book. Only a few minutes into the book, I hear 3 loud bangs on the side of my sleeper. I'm talking, "Holy crap, your truck's on fire, get out now" loud. I opened the curtains and rolled on the window and saw the young American woman I had been speaking with as I was standing next to my truck. I immediately picked up something wrong about her. It wasn't her lack of speech, her odd, disheveled look, or rigid body movements. It was her eyes that caught me. Solid black. I could say that the dark night, coupled with a few drinks, could make me think her eyes were black. But I'm not. When I hit a switch in the back of my truck, the inside lights up like a baseball stadium. Her eyes seem to be pulling the light into them, like miniature black holes. It reminded me of when a woman wearing mascara cries and she looks like a raccoon afterward. It looked like she had rubbed charcoal around her eyes. It also felt like my body was acting of its own accord. Like my body was screaming at my fragile psyche to open the door and let her into my truck. Despite the fact that she looked freaking terrifying and hadn't said a single word to me since meeting her again. I remember having to choke out the word, "No." It reminded me of when you're on the verge of tears, but you choke through them to speak to someone. I was too terrified to look out the side vents to see if she was still standing outside. I was too terrified that I might have ended up looking back into the darkness, only to know in my mind's eye that she could be staring right back at me. I'm shaking just from the memory of it. I live in a small town about an hour south of Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm a 15-year-old male and professional mountain biker. I live in the south side of town, but the town is small enough that I can ride my bike from one end to the other in around 30 minutes. This story happened a year ago. I got in a fight with my parents about not being able to have a sleepover that night and rode off to help get over it. As I rode up a hill, to the road that goes all the way through town. I thought of where to go. I decided I was going to go to a closed down Flying J on the other side of town. I took off, got there about 30 minutes later. And as I was approaching the Flying J, I got an uneasy feeling. I didn't think much of it and shook it off. But as I rode onto the property, I had another uneasy feeling. Trucks still parked there at night, and I had seen drivers in them as I drove past several times. The first thing I noticed was that none of the trucks were running. None of them had a light on. It was around 8:30 p.m., so it was just past dark, and that's when most trucks pull in. I know this because my dad is a truck driver. I had spent 2 months with him on the road that summer. I had just started riding around to the back of the parking lot with that uneasy feeling getting stronger the farther I went into the parking lot. About halfway through, I noticed a dark figure standing by one of the trucks. I couldn't tell if it was looking at me or not, but I thought it was a driver getting some fresh air. As I started getting closer, I noticed I could see through the figure and see the air intake on the side of the truck. For those of you who don't know where that is, it is right in the front of the doors on both sides. It looks like a big barrel. As I got even closer to the figure, I suddenly felt like someone had slugged me in the gut with dread. I looked back up at the figure, and it was gone. I looked back where I was going, and a 7-foot-tall, completely black figure stood in front of me and had red eyes like fireballs floating midair. My quick reflexes made me swerve to the side of the figure, and I started pedaling as fast as I could when around a row of trucks. I looked back and the figure was chasing me. I changed to a higher gear and started to get away from the figure, and as I rode past the fence I looked back, and it stopped right behind the fence. I rode back home as fast as I could. I didn't tell my parents because they wouldn't believe me anyway. The next day I was hanging out with some friends and told them about it. And one of them said they knew kids who used Ouija boards and did some really bad stuff there at night. I shook it off until this year when my dad's trucking company bought the lot. So I have to go there late at night to help my dad unload and tarp trucks. And every time I'm there, I see that figure standing by something, staring right at me. Well, what about you? Have you had something unexplainable happen to you? Something that haunts you and makes you question your sanity? If you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.